Hey everyone, welcome back to His Grace and Glory podcast. We are going to dive into a really cool episode today. We're going to talk all about love leaving a trail. And it's important for us to never underestimate what God is doing, especially whenever life seems extremely chaotic. And, we have our seasons where things seem to be cool, calm, collected. And then there's seasons where things are very chaotic and out of order. But it just kind of brings me back to this story of Jesus sleeping on the boat while they are literally sailing through a storm, and all the disciples are outside of the boat just freaking out, like they are losing it. And he is just sleeping, sound asleep, and they go and wake him up. They're like, Jesus, like, do you not see this? Like, we're gonna die if you don't do something. And he literally just like, I can imagine he's just like kind of like wipes his eyes and he's like yawns, stands up and goes, be still. Everything just stops. And it's like, huh. And what he called out to them was like their lack of faith and just internal peace and comfort of him. Like, obviously he was not going to let all of the whole boat sink in the middle of a storm. Like, they've already watched him perform miracle after miracle after miracle. So he was really just like calling them out for their lack of faith in him. And I think we can say the same thing when we're in chaotic situations, when we're focused on the storm, just like they were focused on the storm. It's chaos and that's all we see. But when we focus on his love and his comfort and his peace and the fact that he holds it all in his hand and we're going to be okay, then we will have internal peace even when it doesn't make sense and even when it doesn't add up. And a recent story that I can share in regards to this is my husband and I recently walked through a season of unexpected unemployment on his end for like 3 months, like unemployment. And we were just like, this was not expected. And, we were walking through this season of really leaning into God. And there was a lot of like, our circumstances didn't make sense. None of it made sense. The numbers didn't make sense. Nothing was adding up in the tangible. And it even caused some like marital turmoil and stuff. But internally at the same time, we were like drawing in this union with God and this deeper trust of knowing like you're not going to let us fall. Like, we're going to be okay. And it grew us in a deeper union together as a team and our trust in God. And it really brought clarity. Obviously, hallelujah, he got employed and things worked out just as God intended them to. And it was really that season of him just drawing us closer to him. And he's like, I've got you. And I think that that's why it's important for us to not underestimate his ways of working and underestimate, whenever we're in this trial. Like, we like to think like, God, where are you? Like, you're not here. And he's like, yes, I am. Like, I am here. Just lean into me and you'll know that I'm here. And so, Lori, what are some, like, I don't know, I guess, what do you have to say on that subject?
Well, as far as chaos, the thing is, when we get into this chaotic moments, then we focus on the chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not focusing on the peace that we've already have. So it's a matter of perspective. So sometimes it's a skill that you can learn and is to not let your emotions overtake you, because emotions are just a tool telling you something is you're meant to look deeper. So when you start feeling your emotions rising up, then you need to learn to step back. It's almost like you step back, but the emotion stays in front of you. And you can almost, it makes me think of like Iron Man and how he had all the way he would just take his hand and move stuff all over, on the technology side of things. So in
Mm-hmm.
essence, you're taking a step back and you're able to manipulate. You're almost like what he's doing is you're taking that emotion and you're peeling it apart and saying, okay, why do I feel this? And what is really happening here? And understanding that just because we feel something doesn't mean we have to swim in it. In essence, we can step out of the pool of our emotions and almost like, and some of my clients I've worked with, I'm like, be like a detective. Take your feeling out of it, step out of it and go, okay, why do I feel sad, or why am I feeling anxious, or why is stress overtaking me? Because we don't have to be overtaken by it. And we can learn that we're not owned by our emotions. And if we are, then we really need to work on not being that way. Because think about it, if you get angry all of a sudden and you take it out on your spouse or your kids or your boss, like when you're going to get fired, you're going to get into a fight with this person, your children, or, you're supposed to be raising them up, loving them the way that God loves them. And when you get caught up in that chaotic emotion, they don't deserve that. No one deserves to get slapped by your emotions,
Right.
including you. So that is like, I think if you got anything out of this episode today, would be to learn that just because I have an emotion doesn't mean I have to have that emotion. I don't have to let it rule me. I can take ownership of it and say, wait a minute, and
Mhm.
look deeper. And those are those moments where learning to do that is going to get you out of so many things. It's going to get you out of lies. It's going to get you out of confusion. It's going to bring clarity. It's going to bring peace that God has already left us. Sometimes we forget that He's already gifted us peace. So if we're not in that moment of peace, then we got to ask ourselves, okay, what just took me away from God's peace? Because He didn't
Mhm.
take it from me.
Mhm.
And then I want to reiterate too that whatever you're focusing on will become your focus. So if you're focusing on the chaos, then you're going to have more chaos because that's all you're looking at. It's that ability to be like, I'm going to focus on God's peace. I'm going to focus on that love that God is leaving, because even when we feel like we're in a mess, God doesn't have messes.
Mhm.
So we may feel like we're in a big mess, and meanwhile, He's like, no, there's a lesson and a message.
Mhm.
That's the only reason that you're going through this right now is for learning and edifying Him. Like,
Share your concept, because I think that speaks volumes when it comes to, really looking at the chaos versus, God's trail in all of it. Because when we focus on Him, His evidence is very loud and clear of where He's working, and even in our past, like where He has worked. Like when I focus on Him, I'm able to see clearly like where He's worked along the whole way for my favor. Um, in ways that honor and glorify Him, right? Because we think that just because I'm not getting, this job that I so thought I needed and wanted, doesn't mean that He's still not working for our favor, because He knows what's better beyond that. But that's a side point from what I was saying. When we talk about the chaos versus just focusing in tune with Him, and like you said, what you focus on is you're going to stay in that place. So because it's a thought, which then transitions to deep rooting into our soul and our being, and then we speak about it, so it's just a toxic cycle. And so share your concept that you had told me a long time ago about the impact of love, and when we're in that fullness of Him, and what we receive and what we give comes back around in that fullness. That I remember you sharing that with me. I'm like, what? It leaves like in those waves.
oh, the ripples. Yeah. Well, let's first look at, like, love is a trail. So all throughout your life, and this is another thing that I've really used a lot with clients, friends, whoever I'm talking to, that they don't know. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. Well, look back, because the whole time that you've been growing up, you were already your purpose, because your purpose is you. You are your purpose. And that love is always leaving a trail. So if you start looking back to, the things that you did automatically, just joyfully did, that's already a piece of you. So for instance, in my case, I was always that person people came to for encouragement and for empowerment and to feel that love, which is crazy because at the time I didn't necessarily feel it, but God was still using me to shine it to them. I just was allowing it to pass through. Whole other story. But you can look back, and here's another good thing that I did, and many, many years ago, because when you think about all the times that you've been through these horrible chaotic moments of chaos and things that made you feel bad, sit down. Do this. Get a piece of paper, you sit down, and on the left side of the page, write down all these moments that you were hurt, or someone said something to you, or something bad happened, or maybe it was like Taylor was saying, like a time of unemployment, or all these things that seemed like horrible moments in your life. You write those on the left side. And then on the right side, you look at each one individually and you say, okay, in this moment, who was there? Who did God place in my life? What awesome thing happened at that same time? Because if you literally go back, you're going to start seeing this trail of love from every time that you thought He wasn't there. he was, and it's like he said to me one day, and he was like, "You're always so worried about making the wrong choice. Why do you think I'm
Mm.
going to let you fall?" He's like, "I already know the choice you're going to make, and I'm throwing down pillows." He's like, why are you so afraid to make choices?" And I'm like, I don't know. He's always leaving a trail of love. It's just on us to start focusing on it. Because the more you focus on it, again, your focus becomes your focus. And you start focusing on his love and understanding how much he loves you, then you start to see it more and more in your life. And then those times of chaos slowly slip into times of peace because you're like, I'm going to look back. And this actually was a moment I had, I don't know, it was like 3 or 4 years ago, because there are times, sometimes if we're not learning a lesson we're meant to learn, I call it circling the mountain. So I kept circling because I was obeying on one end, but then freaking out on the other end. Like he's asking me to do this thing and I do this thing, but then I freak out the whole time. And I remember I was back around to that same moment and I can remember it was dark because I love looking at the stars. And I'm out on my patio and I'm just having this conversation with God. And I'm like, okay, we're here again. And I'm like, do I want to look back? Because if I go back to the last time it happened, I freaked out. I freaked out. I wasn't calm. I had no peace. And then everything was fine because he was loving a trail, but I was freaking out. And so this time I actually laid there. I'm like, okay, next year when we get around to this time again, do I want to look back and have another time of chaos where I freaked out and didn't have peace? Or do I want to look back and say, you know what? I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to trust completely in you. And I'm just going to focus on the love that you have for me. So that when a year comes by, now it's been like 4 years, and I can look back and say, ha, I didn't freak out. I kept
Yay.
my peace. I kept my calm. We have that ability, but sometimes we have to sit out on our patios in the dark and have a conversation and saying, what do I want? What do I want to see next year when I look back at this moment? Do I want to see a period of huge growth because I didn't freak out? Or do I want to go back around that mountain again? Because after so many times, that mountain gets really old when you're just circling it. You can always see your footprints from the time before. But the thing about love is it's in everything. And so not only is it leaving a trail, but we create a trail. Our every step is creating a trail. And it's what I call ripples. So everything you send out comes back to you energy wise, which is the same with your thoughts. And we talked about this in another episode about your words. What you say out loud, Satan can tweak. He can go, oh, because when you make a comment like, if this happens, I'm going to be so mad. He's
Right.
like, okay, cool, easy. I'm going to make you mad because you just told me exactly what you wanted to happen to make you mad. So in
Right.
essence, you helped create that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing about love is it's a ripple. And so in order to give, you must first have, but also in order to receive, you have to give. So it's an interesting little thing God created. It's in the laws of the universe. But everything you send out comes back to you. But everything you send out doesn't come back in the same that amount that you gave. So say I had $5 and I gave it to somebody, and then they gave 10, and then they get like it comes back to you
Mm-hmm.
bigger. And love is the same. So when you learn to shine God's love, it ripples out across the whole. So think of yourself as this piece, the cosmic puzzle. That's how actually God started talking to me about this giant cosmic puzzle and how we're each a piece. And everything that we do touches all the other pieces. So every time that you send out whatever it is you're sending out, if you're sending out hate, then guess what? You're sending back to yourself. Hate, whatever you're sending out is rippling back to you. So, but the amazing thing about love only ever gets bigger. It never ends. It never goes away. So the more that you learn to, first of all, love yourself, because God says to love your neighbor as yourself. You cannot love your neighbor if you don't love yourself because you don't, what are you giving them? You don't have anything. So you first
Right.
must love yourself. So the more that you're able to love, the more that casts love out and the bigger that ripple is, comes back to you. It's almost like watching the ocean. You see how the waves kind of go out, but they also come in, and you see some big ones come in. That's why people surf. So you can look at it this way, like, what do you want to be surfing on? Do you want to be surfing on anger and chaos and the craziness of the world, or do you want to be surfing on God's love? I'm choosing his love. I want big ripples of love coming back my way. So take a look around in your life right now. And is it what you want? Is it what you envision? Is it what you dream of? If it's not, the only thing that's going to change it is the ripples that you're sending out, because those ripples are still coming back.
Oof.
Something to think about.
That's good.
Start making changes now because those ripples got to ripple out and come back.
That is so good. And I think it's great to add on to that that we will no longer look to, like, whenever we are operating in this fullness with God, and his love, like we're no longer gonna like desire to like cling to these other things, throughout the chaos. And it's like, oh, this is my comfort. Like, this is a superficial example that, like, I'm a super like cozy kind of girl. Like, I love blankets and like soft things and like to just be like cuddly. And it's almost, when I look back now in my childhood, that was something I clung to, is like safety, like security, like it was soft. And the first like really soft blanket that I ever received, was from, that I like tangibly remember, was from my dad for Valentine's Day when I was a really young girl. And it's almost like, I feel like now looking back, that's some sort of security for me, with like soft blankets, from my dad. And at the time he was working out of town, so I didn't really have him around much. And so now, like, to see that transition where I'm no longer clinging to like all these things, or to my relationship, or to, certain food, and, to money, and to all these things that we feel like are our safety, our security. But to cling to God when things aren't going great, because yes, it's imperative for us to send out these ripples of love. But we have to first be receiving them to send them out. And so we have to embrace the fullness that God has for us. So then we can send that out and it will come back. And sometimes it's not going to come back in the ways that we think. And I think it's important to surrender that to God, because we can get in that place where we're like, God, I'm doing all the right things. Like, I'm doing all the right things. Like, where's the love? Like, I feel like I'm getting attacked. I feel like I'm getting hate. Like, I feel like I'm not getting back what I'm putting out. And this is an opportunity to draw even closer into him and really see on a deeper level, because sometimes it's not the way that we think. And I think this is such a humbling experience to know, like, oh, I haven't mastered the mysteries of God. Like, I am not greater than he. And he has a plan for me to draw in near, to understand more about him, and see that he's still going to be good. And I'm still going to receive the ripples of love in return, whether it's here in this moment from the things I think, or it's years to come, or it's an eternity with him. It might not be in this moment. So when we look at our life as a whole, as like, hey, eternity started the moment that I started to follow Jesus. It's like, we don't need to have that entitled mindset that what I put out right now I must receive, next week. So I think that's a great point to add to that as well, that we'll no longer hold on to these tangibles of like, oh, I'm going to sow these good seeds because I really want that job. Or, just that tangible, that security that we feel like we need. And, he's like, no, I'm bigger and more wondrous, more mysterious than you think. And so it gives us that opportunity to really press in more and see his love trail that he's scattered throughout our timeline of life for us.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you make him your focus, like everything else in your life is going to shift enormously, because you're not going to be worrying about money, and you're not going to be worrying about the chaos that's happening around you, because you understand that there is a bigger picture. There's his love is flowing through this world. So his love that leaves a trail is also causing huge ripples. But I also want to remind, when people are like, what are you talking about ripples? It's the same as you reap what you sow. So the things that you're sowing, you shall reap. So that's why you got to think about that energy of what you're sowing is what ripples back to you. So I don't want you to get that confused with, this isn't what God says, because it is. You sow, you
Yep.
reap. Both are verbs, mind you. I'll throw that out there too. Those are actions. So you can't just sit back waiting for things to happen to you. You have to have inspired action, which you can't get unless you're connected to God. But I did want to share something with you from when I really was way back in the beginning of my journey, and how God was showing what happens when it's you and him. So in this case, I'm just going to read what it was, because it's very powerful. It's his words. And I totally recommend journaling with God and allowing him to speak through you, because this is basically what this is.
Wait, pause. I want to just add something to that right there. Laurie has an incredible course called Becoming the One God Called, which is what I took when I was first really diving into this intimacy with God. And I would highly recommend looking into it if you are looking to see how can I, deepen this intimacy with God in my journaling. And I'm telling you, it'll blow your mind. So that's just a side note. Check it out. So go ahead.
Okay. All right. So you and me. So this is you and God. Okay. So as I read it, be thinking it as if you are reading it or he is speaking this to you. So you and me, even in your longings and sadness, you stayed with me. In your emptiness, you stayed with me. In your fear, you stayed with me. Through every emotion, remember, those are not meant to own us. In every emotion, you stayed with me. Though evil stood where you were, you stayed with me. You did not fall for any deceptions because I was there with you because you stayed with me. You stopped running to be with me. While you stayed with me, this is powerful. Listen really close to this. While you stayed with me, I moved you to the top of the mountain. And you're not going to notice the climb. When you're holding on to me, and all of your longings have come to pass for the door is unlocked and you step through it. When you do this, there is no going back. You will leave the darkness and you will stand directly in his light. And that is what you're called to be doing, shining his light for the entire world to see, so that his glory is manifested in you. We are meant to manifest his glory and everything will change. And remember, every day is a new day because he says his mercies are new every morning. So no matter what happened yesterday, doesn't matter. Don't take it in today. You can turn the page. Don't turn the page back. If God turns the page and he has cast your sin from the east to the west, don't take it back. Don't pick it back up. And here's the greatest thing about it. So I used to not sleep well. I used to be afraid of the dark mostly because, discernment, demons, saw them. They were there. But here's the thing. So when you trust him so fully, you're going to fall asleep in his arms. And while you're asleep in his arms, he's going to change you. Because remember, he's the only one that can make things grow. So when you allow him to mold you and change you into who you're called to become, because he's the only one that can lead you to that, then you're wholly his. And he will make you new. And remember that you are made in his image. So his blood runs through your veins. And his strength is what holds you.
Amen.
So use your faith. If you're like me, don't think that you can't. Because I remember that day where I was like, I don't have any faith, God. I don't have any. And he said, can you have just a mustard seed of faith? Look it up, Google it. It's one of the smallest seeds. And that's where you start, is with that tiny seed of faith. And he can build it. Because remember, as long as you're planting it and sowing into it, he's going to make it grow. Because that's what he does. But we have to trust him in it. And we have to sow those seeds. So remember to pay attention to what you're sowing. And don't let Satan deceive you and tell you, oh, that's not going to work. Because he doesn't even fully comprehend what God's going to do for you. He doesn't like it. I can tell you that. He's going to try to keep you from it. So keep that in mind, that God loves you so much. His love is so overwhelming. It is in everything. So if you're sitting here listening to this and thinking, but I don't feel it, then that tells me right there that you need to draw near to him, because you're disconnected. He doesn't disconnect from us. We disconnect from him. And don't feel shame or guilt or anything. If you're standing here in that moment thinking, I don't feel it, because I was there. And he changed my entire world from a place of hate and anger to just love and acceptance and understanding and learning to follow that trail of his love. It's not just meant for me to see. It's not just meant for Taylor to see. It's meant for all of you to see it. It's just the more that you draw near to him, you'll be able to see with his eyes. If you don't draw near to him, you're seeing through the eyes of this world, and you're going to see the chaos and the condemnation and all the blame and the hate that is just out there. But his love is bigger than all of that. If you learn to just wrap yourself in it, and it is a step. It's a step every day. It's that mustard seed of faith step every day that will just are bigger. And pretty soon that mountain will come from that seed. You're building mountains for God, but you can't do it until you start stepping out in that faith. And yeah, he really took over there. He took over. But he loves you with a love that never ends. You matter to him. He sees you. He loves you. He adores you so completely. And he wants you to sit in that love. He doesn't want you to ever be away from that love. You were born in that love. You were swarmed by his love when you came into this world. And it's the world that is trying to take it from you. Don't let it. And you have Taylor and I, if you need someone to talk to, reach out to us. We will fill you. We will help fill you. We'll help guide you to that love, because that is why I do what I do. Was that moment when he showed me the fullness of his love. And when you're in that, all the shame, the guilt, all those things that seem so big disappear. And that's what I want for you. That's what Taylor wants for you. That's why we do what we do.
What God wants for you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Good. Wow. Well, that was an incredible episode. I definitely saw God leaving his love trail all throughout that episode. So thank you guys so much for tuning in as always. And we pray that you got so much from it, that you feel God's love just consuming you right now in this moment. And you're just reflecting on all the places that he's just expressed himself to you and his love to you. And so hold on to those, cherish those, and continue to seek those moments in your life. And we look forward to having you check out our next episode. So have a great day.